at least once a year, you just take some time to go through your pantry and find out what's there. And this is a particularly good time to do it because you're going to be wanting to put new things in. So it's a good idea to see what's there, what you either need to use up or throw away. So today we're going to look at some examples of some jars of canned food that have come from a couple of families' homes, one being mine, so you can see that not everything gets done that we would hope for it to happen. These are examples of things, some that were canned last year, some that were canned many years ago and should have been rotated out. And when you can for this year, what you need to do is pull the things that you're going to keep forward and put the new things in the back, and always label so you know what's there. Let's look and see what we have. This first one is a jar of soup mix, and you can see it's in good condition at this point. It was canned last year. Now, the goal, of course, is always to rotate food out within 1 year because there will be a drop in the nutritional value of foods after 1 year. But in practicality, that's not always going to work because you don't always get the same number of yield each year, and so you have less, and so you want to plan for tiding over a little bit. The safety of food is the first thing that you should be concerned with. And always, if the jar is still sealed and intact, and you can see that this one is, the seal is down, there is no bubbles moving in the jar, which means there's no gas being produced, there aren't any cracks, the headspace is good, with this being a food that should be about 1 inch. This jar is still safe to use to hold over, but again, you'd want to pull it to the front. The problem with this jar is that it doesn't have a date on it, nor does it have a label. Most people think they know what's in the jar. They can see by looking, but that's not always the case. As things continue to age, some things darken, and you may not be the one that goes into the pantry. The next person may not know what's there. Somebody might think this is some kind of a pickle and get a real surprise when they open it. So always label, always date on the label. Put on there what's in it, when it was stored. These are actually canned in 1982, and they are pickled watermelon rind. And you can see 3 jars all canned at the same time. Now what you also will see is, if you look right under the flat, is that the food is touching the flat, or almost touching the flat. Now the problem with that is that this is a highly acidic food, and all food has some acid, although some has less. And when it touches the bottom of the flat, you get things like this. Here's the first example. You see that the rust is coming up. This jar was originally like the first one. It was touching the flat also, and you can see a lot of rust. The flat is actually being eaten through by the food inside. And when it's a severe case, as you can see here, I hope, it's actually eaten through the jar. And if I push that down, you can see there's actually a hole here. The food is also in extremely poor condition. There is no liquid left at all. It's actually evaporated, and whoever had this, probably when they went into their pantry, they would smell this vinegary smell and not quite know where it came from. Food jar was probably pushed toward the back, and so they couldn't see what exactly the problem was. These were labeled, so that wasn't the difficulty. They just didn't get used until the point where they were no longer usable. So a lot of things go on in your jar. Remember that if the jar is intact, the food is safe to eat, but the nutritional value is going down as every day passes, and it limits the amount of room that you have on your shelf. You also get deterioration in the eating quality. They don't look as good, and unfortunately, after several years, they won't taste as good either. The texture may have some changes, color changes. They just don't look as good, and there's some flavor loss. So go through your cabinets this spring, find out what's usable and what's not, and get ready for the summer season. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.